Hey guys, so welcome to my first ever stream here of Play Ball. My name is Viper Strike, and we're right here. We're getting to start off here at Fort Campbell at Kilo Hockey, Kilo Hotel, Oscar Papa here, and this here is the historic home, and this is the historic home of the 101st Airborne and the 160th SOAR, which is the two major bases right here. And as you can tell right here, um, and I want to, hey there, Captain Sickbag. Thanks for the follow. I really appreciate it. I know this is my first stream, so this is not going to be a really easy one for me. And I also want to thank you, Kozaki Flyer C6. I really appreciate it. So let me get the full screen. So wait, just I'm sorry. Ah, there we go. So guys, this is Fort Campbell, and one of the major things to talk about here is the home of the Screaming Eagles, the 101st Airborne, the mightiest airborne division of World War II. And what they're known for was during the Battle of the Bulge and their involvement in the D-Day. As one of the first major events of the Second World War, they were one of the major keys in the factor of that conflict. As you can tell here, most of the pictures I got here are either public domain or I have to give a license. So that's how it works. So right here you can see all the statues of the 101 Airborne. So you guys want to know what am I doing here? So I'm going to take a different kind of plane with me for the flight. This is the plane I'm talking about. This is the Jabiru J170. This was an add-on from Iris Simulations, and this is an ultralight aircraft, light sport aircraft that is made for bush flying through the harsh terrain of Australia. Let me see if I can try to get this thing on. So, Copilot. Right here. Checklist. Yeah. Master. So you can tell from our route on my trusty little nav map, I actually have the route where we're going to be taking. I need to get loaded in first. Such a rush from this being my first stream. Booyah. It should look like something like this. We take off from Campbell, then our first stop will be in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And then afterwards, we won't stop Godman, we would actually just go there to visit Fort Knox. Then once we do that, we take a bit of a tour around Louisville and land at Bowman Airfield. And once we do there, then we'll be heading to Cincinnati. We'll actually be landing at Covington, which is Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International. Then for the final flight, I'm going to be changing a plane, and I'll be taking a special little plane, the Aerolite 103, and we'll fly around Cincinnati from there. I think that would be really cool. It's one thing just to go through the stadiums, it's another thing to fly over the city and give it a bit of a tour. And on the community streams tab of Two Tone Murphy's Discord, there should be the flight plans for any of those who haven't got them yet. So let's get this plane started. Taxi, strobe light, check, fuel shop. Carburetor heat. Fuel pump on. Whoa. That's always a little something. Choke. Throttle. Check the alternator. Stow. And I think that should be enough, so I need to change my CDL sighting, GPS. Okay, that should be anywhere. So once we do that, I'm going to get the ATC and Campbell ground. I remain in pattern, and I'll be taking off at runway 05. So keep it. Now the thing about the Jabiru, though, and that's what's going to make it really difficult, is the fact this thing is kind of unsteady. I need to be really careful with it. Good afternoon there, Goblin Zeus. So if you come here just in time for the takeoff, if you want to know where we're taking off, it is Kilo Hotel Oscar Papa, I believe. Yeah, Jabiru's a good choice. It's also nice that this thing's got an autopilot, so this thing would be perfect for the trip. So this is one of my favorite planes of all the add-on planes. This is one of my favorites, and the reason I like it so much is because it has great range, and I've always liked the Cessna 152, but I never really liked how the 152 kind of doesn't have autopilots. This thing is made for bush flying. It's amazing for that. Amazing. Oh yes, I agree with you. There, Gobazus. This thing's this thing is really good for the bush trips because of its amazing range. Whereas most bush planes have a range, let's say 640 nautical miles, this thing could go up to 800 nautical miles, nearly 900. This makes it way better for the bush trips than any of those planes. Gotta be careful not to tip this thing over. This thing's extremely unstable. Gotta turn around. Turn around, turn around. No, no. Oh, God. Stop. Okay. Let me get the ATC. Request VFR takeoff. Yep. Now I'm ready to take off. Before we get started, I'm going to set my altitude. I will be setting this at 2,500 feet because we're going east. So actually, we're going to go 3,500 feet because if we go east, it's odd numbers. There as well. And then I will be ready to take off. And I'm officially off. And as we take off, I'm going to try and gain some altitude for a bit. So we'll be flying over the Fort Campbell site to our left. To our right, I mean. I'm just going to circle around the place until everyone gets up. Oh, hello there, Splasher 6. It's good to see you, man. I know I've been so busy trying to set up this stream, I haven't really been to your Pan American Highway journey. I wonder how that's been going for you. Oh. Hold on 1 second. I'm positive. 1, 2, 3. You think you can hear me better now, Splasher? So I guess mostly everyone's up. So to our right, I'm going to look at the cockpit. Right ahead of me is the whole Fort Campbell installation. Fort Campbell is known for quite a few things. One of the most important things about Fort Campbell is the fact they trained the 101st Airborne, and they've been training them how to drop out of how to rappel from a helicopter. And I think that's pretty cool how they do that. And Fort Campbell is basically right in this, is smack dab between the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. So we'll fly around the installation for a little bit. There you are, Kazaki. I see you on my 9. Alright, I'm gonna turn on this autopilot. Let's go. Oh, good. I got the voice thing's working out better. So, believe it or not, Fort Campbell has actually had a history. So we've got to talk about first about the 101st Airborne. Basically, about Fort Campbell, this thing was actually built in 1941, and apparently it was made to accommodate an armored division, various support troops, and its size was around 102,414 acres, which makes it a pretty big base. And this thing could accommodate billets up to 2,422 officers and over 45,000 listed personnel can be at Fort Campbell. Which is right here. The 101st Airborne, they're universally well known as the Screaming Eagles, which explains to their logo right there. And they were well known during World War II for being involved in an Operation Overlord, which is D-Day, Operation Market Garden, which is the liberation of the Netherlands, and most famously, the Battle of the Bulge around Bastogne. There is one other major division that located in Fort Campbell, and that's called the 160th SOAR, which is Special Operations Aviation Regiment. And what they do is they provide helicopter aviation support for general forces, and they include attack, assault, and reconnaissance at night. And some of the aircraft they use include the CH-47 Chinook, the UH-60 Blackhawk, and the MD-500 Defender. Are all aircraft they use. And at one time they even captured an Mi-25 helicopter by using 2 Chinook helicopters, and they weren't even detected over a range of over 400 miles. It was top secret, and I mean, the fact they couldn't even be detected is pretty impressive, if you ask me. Itself, which I think is kind of really interesting to point out here. So let's put this shot down here. I mean, this is really nice out here. Good old Kentucky, plains of Kentucky. Can't go wrong with that. Let me pause this for a sec. I gotta adjust the sound. Splasher's saying he's having a hard time hearing my voice. Is that working better for all of you? Let me know that works better for you, Splasher. Okay, great, Goblin Zeus. So something I'm really interested in talking about here is definitely around during the route between here and our first stop in Bowling Green. We'll be flying through the small town of Russellville, which is a small town in the region. So as you can tell here, we'll be flying over the place. We have behind us Druid Zeus. Whoa, I'm flying way too high. I was supposed to put it 3500, apparently lost track. You see, the Jabberew's autopilot isn't like other planes. I'm gonna have to reduce the throttle. So obviously, let me play a bit of music so that way to kind of make the mood a bit better. I wonder if the music's too loud. If not, I will change it. And by the way, the music I got here, this is actually from Soundtrack by Twitch. So, I got that so I don't have to worry about anything. Yeah, that's the thing I noticed too, Splasher. The dash on this looks just like the... Okay, good. I didn't want to make it too loud there, Goblin Zeus. But yeah, on that Splasher, it is very much just like um, on the EX Cub. So, I bet a lot of you guys have been wanting to know about baseball itself. How did it exactly become America's national pastime? And it didn't start overnight, actually. Baseball took a long time to get there, like many other sports. I mean, it took the world years for football to become the world sport. Similar thing applied for baseball. So, the origins of the game actually originated from immigrants in the 1850s from New York. And basically, what they were is that it actually originated from an earlier game called Rounders, and basically, a good friend of mine, Steve Solo UK, said Rounders is a game played by girls. So basically, that's how it was. And on the left is from the 1880s. That's what baseball used to look like all the way back in the old days. However, over time, baseball has spread not just from the United States, but it's very popular in Latin America, like in the Caribbean nations like Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and also in areas like Venezuela and Cuba. And it's even spread as far as in East Asia, believe it or not. Both Japan and South Korea have big baseball markets, which makes it quite a big deal for the game itself. So basically, for the simplicity's sake of the sport, the rules of baseball are actually surprisingly simple. It's quite surprisingly simple, if you ask me. Basically, the baseball rules. I'm not going to cover all 188 pages of the official rules by Major League Baseball. I'm not going to cover it. But I will help you simplify some of the terminology and all of the stuff that is important to you to know. Basically, for simplicity's sake, it is usually played between two teams composing to 9 players that take turns playing on offense and defense. Offense being the batting and slugging. And basically what I mean about this is very simple. And defense is basically fielding pitching. And a pair of turns is what they call an inning. And those innings, and usually in a major league game, they consist of nine innings. But however, those number of innings could change depending on the sort of league. For example, in college, it's usually at 7 innings in the high school level and 6 innings in Little League. So it can vary between what leagues it is. And the inning is split between top and bottom based on the visiting team. The goal of the game is to score runs by touching all 4 bases set at the corners of a square-shaped diamond, which kind of looks like it's kind of hard for me to do in a diamond, but that's what it looks like. It's square, and you tilt it like that. That's kind of what a diamond looks like. My apologies. My apologies is that as well. And the team in the field tries to prevent runs from being scored. 3 outs usually signifies a change of the inning. As well. And the first team, and whoever scores the most runs ahead of the opponent wins the game. However, if in case of a tie, it would usually go to extra innings. And those are always more interesting than before. Basically, what really makes baseball kind of a unique game, and one of the things that really sets it apart, is the ballparks itself. Usually, the boundaries of a ballpark are usually 90 degrees in a diamond, which let me get the slideshow loaded up, as you can see. So usually a baseball diamond is split between 90-degree areas within the foul lines. And basically the foul lines extend from home plate at a 45-degree angle, meaning the 90-degree area within the foul lines is fair territory, which is all that area. That area over there is fair. That little small area over there is foul. The part enclosed by the base is called the infield, which is, on the next picture, all that brown stuff is the infield. Kind of it. Now, the one thing that really is unique, though, is the outer body boundary of the infield, and that's called the outfield. And unlike other sports, which have the outfields like in rigid dimensions, Major League ballparks are not that rigid, and that's because many of them, especially the older ballparks back then, actually had to be built by the area they were built. So Ebbets Field, for example, was a total bandbox because they had to make do with the space they were given. Whereas in other stadiums, in particular some of the older ones, some of them might have symmetrical dimensions. One ballpark, Fenway, has like a 37-foot tall wall in left field, which is the left side of the outfield. So basically the three major tools that batters really have that all baseball players should have is the glove, the baseball, and the bat. Are the three major pieces of equipment. The baseball glove is basically when you're the baseball glove itself is tied in. Basically, we talk about the first one. Actually, I forgot. The first one we talk about is the baseball itself. In addition to the three major ones, we got to talk about protective helmets. Those are also standard for all batters. So, a regulation baseball is comprised of a rubber or cork center, which is wrapped in yarn, and it's usually covered with white horsehide or cowhide. And I got a Major League Baseball around here somewhere. Hold up for 1 second. Let me go grab one. Ah. See? This is a regulation baseball. Pretty cool. It's made by Rawlings. So basically, what a regulation baseball allows you to do is that a regulation baseball is also between 9 to 9.25 inches in circumference with a mass of around 5 to 5.25 ounces. Yes, Major League Baseball actually is specific. They are very specific on how much a baseball should weigh and how much everything should be. So, change that. Everything as well. However, one of the most important things about a baseball is also woven by over 108 stitches, hand-woven stitches through the leather. Now, the next part of equipment are the baseball bats. So baseball bats historically have been around 3 pounds, but has since been around 33 to 34 ounces. And by far the most popular wood to make baseball bats is ash. And the reason ash is really good is because ash because wood made from ash is very flexible and really durable, which means that if you hit a baseball with a wood baseball bat from ash, that flexibility means it can transfer more energy from the bat to the ball into that direction, which will make it ball fly farther. However, that being said, maple's going to be much more popular because the problem is ash trees are facing a rather deadly invasive species known as the emerald ash borer, and that's something I know as a biology student and graduate. That's something I probably am very aware of. Now, baseball gloves are kind of interesting in that they are made from leather, and they can come in both hands, so the player can throw with their dominant hand. So if you're a right-handed thrower like me, I get a glove for my left hand, and vice versa if you're left-handed. As well. So they're Kozaki Flyer. They build a brand new stadium for the Trash Pandas. Why would they name it after the Trash Pandas? That's not a good minor league name. There are lots of good minor league names, but there's also a lot of really bad ones. And no, Kozaki, I've not coached Little League yet. Contrary to what you believe, I have not done that yet. So basically, after I talk about that, basically we talk about the 9 positions in baseball, which is when I go back to the Major League ballparks. As you can definitely see here, the catcher is right in this position. That's the catcher's role. He's supposed to catch the pitches for the pitcher, which is okay right here. Then we have each position based on the base. So first base is here, second's here, third base is here, but they also have an additional position in the infield called the shortstop, and he plays a really important position. He plays a really important position in the infield. Then we have the 3 outfield positions: left field, center field, and right field. And what they do is to catch the ball as far out there in the outfield as they can. The ball's hit beyond the infield. And finally, in some professional leagues, there is a position called a designated hitter, and they take the spot from the pitcher in the lineup, which means the pitcher doesn't have to hit, which gives teams an additional bat. Which is quite interesting because only one league has that, and that's the American League. They're the only ones to have it. Raccoons. Yeah, I still don't like it. It's not a good name for them. So we're not far from our first stop in Bowling Green. So we will be landing in Bowling Green Regional Airport, and we will be landing at runway 03, which shouldn't be too long to get there. Mud Hens. But the Mud Hens has been a classic name there, Kozaki. The Mud Hens have been a classic name since the 1890s. I mean, that's... Oh, wow. Goblin Zeus, thank you for the follow. I really appreciate it. Any follow, I'm grateful for any follow I can get. Especially with this being my first stream. I really appreciate it. They are remembered, yeah, MASH. One of the characters in MASH actually likes the Toledo Mud Hens. That's probably how they got most famous in culture and pop culture. So we can definitely tell from the inside. Um, we're not too far from the airport. We just got to get there a little bit. So I'm going to set the autopilot down a little lower. So I will be setting my new altitude to be 2,500 feet. Actually, it'll be set around 2,000. My bad. So we'll be on our way for our next stop in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So there's quite a few things about Bowling Green we should definitely check out. My WX is rainy. Yeah. So Bowling Green is very well known for Fountain Square. It is also the home of Western Kentucky University. The Western Kentucky Hilltoppers are quite a big deal in Western Kentucky. And finally, and it's also the baseball team that plays there is the Bowling Green Hot Rods, which is kind of appropriate considering the city is well known for its automotive history. And finally, obviously, the most well-known attraction in Bowling Green is the Corvette Museum. That's because Corvettes have been built here in Bowling Green ever since 1981. Bowling Green is also well known for quite a few people. Current U.S. Senator Rand Paul is from Bowling Green. Two-time Major League Baseball All-Star Corey Hart and film director John Carpenter are all are people from Bowling Green. So I don't think we're very far from the airport, so I'm going to actually take off my autopilot. Okay. Boom. Let's see if I can get the smooth landing. After all, I want to prove my skills just like I did the landing challenge. I wonder if the music's too loud. I apologize if the music's too loud. Gotta readjust the trim. Hello there, Super Typhon. It's good to see you, man. I appreciate the follow off stream. I really appreciate it. Okay. This isn't an easy landing. Turn this on for dramatic effect. Hey, I appreciate you being there for me, Goblin Zeus. I really appreciate you being there. Sorry for the FPS problems. Get there, get there. Perfect. That was smooth. And I'm down. Look at that. That was smooth. Alright, Kazaki, let's see what you can do. Let me stop here for a sec. Turn on parking brake. There goes Kazaki Flyer. Let's see what he does. Look at that. That was smooth. Beautiful. Beautiful. So, we're down here in Bowling Green, and basically this would be the first stop. But I guess since everyone's here, we're going to go ahead and get for the next takeoff site. I don't think we have to wait for too much. So actually, since this runway is pretty long, and these 2 planes don't really need much to take off, we're actually going to take off in the middle of this runway. And we're off. Whoa, yeah, that thing is loud. Yeah, don't overturn it or anything like that. Sorry about the jump scare. That is the thing the Jabiru is known for. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so sorry. It's the Jabiru's thing. So, yep. So, Kozaki Fire, if you don't mind, let's go take off back at runway 3. Oh god. Yeah, this thing is a pain in the butt to taxi. So, we're ready to take off here at runway 3. And yes, Gamzus, that is true. The Jabiru is incredibly unstable. That's why braking and landing this thing can be a pain. I know that wasn't such a great takeoff. Sorry. That's the sound effect of the Jabiru if you over the angle attack. Oh, hello there, Bot Tip. I see you on the ground there. So we're gonna have to take a bit of a detour. If you So we're going to be flying over the College Hill District of Bowling Green. That is where Western Kentucky's from. WKU. Now I know Bowling Green is not photogrammetry like some of the other cities. Mainly Louisville's the only city in the state of Kentucky to get photogrammetry. So we're flying over Bowling Green Ballpark, where I'm heading to right now. That is Bowling Green Ballpark. Unfortunately, it's now a bunch of office buildings. But from the picture from the slideshow, it actually looks much better than that. There is one more little quick pit stop before we get back to the route. And we're going to be visiting the National Corvette Museum. So we follow this highway. If we follow it, we will get to the National Corvette Museum. That's, if you're a Corvette lover or any car lover, you're going to definitely like visiting there. And there she is in front of us, to my right. That is where the National Corvette Museum is located. In addition to being where the Corvette Museum is located, we're also right next to the factory that has built the Corvettes. And you can see a racetrack where they test it, the MCM Motorsports Park, which is where they test all of the vets. Yeah. Oh, really, Splasher? You were actually in a week before it caved in. You were very lucky. So apparently, 8 Corvettes were actually dug into that sinkhole, and the total cost of all those vehicles that were wrecked in that museum was estimated to be $1 million. I mean, $1 million of priceless Corvettes. So I'll put on the autopilot. I'll take it back to the altitude of 2,500 feet. And time to go. Corvette, the car, I suppose. Yeah, the Corvette is their top of the line sports car. Goblin Zeus. Recently, the newest Corvette is now mid-engined after all those years being a front-engine car. Just like, and that's ironic because considering that the mid-engine car was actually what the designer was originally wanting the Corvette to be. So, we definitely have to understand a few things. There it's about 2,500 feet. So, one of the first major places we'll be visiting to soon, if we look to our right after between Lindsayville, if we look to our right, that would be Mammoth Cave to our 3 o'clock. Now, this cave site is actually the world's longest natural cave site in the world, with over 10,000 square feet, which is massive. And Goblin Zeus, yeah, they're great cars in the U.S., like the Mustang, yeah, the Bullets. Stevie McQueen, that was the name of the Mustang, the Bullets. Apparently, let me put some research into it. That car just came in at around 3.74 million US dollars, which is crazy amounts of money. To put that in perspective, 3.7 million, you could buy tons of copies of Microsoft Flight Simulator. You could buy multiple, like thousands of premium deluxe editions of Microsoft Flight Simulator. Which is actually insane. Now would be a good time to actually talk about something else I have in mind. So, how did baseball get its rise in the first place? Well, professional baseball was started back in 1869 about the Red Stockings, but that's what we're talking about in Cincinnati when we get there. But baseball actually had a couple of bits of rise in itself. There are two major pieces, Morgan Bulkley and Ban Johnson. Morgan Bulkley was the first founder of the National League in 1876. And basically, there were originally 8 teams, but 8 chart teams, including Chicago, Philadelphia, Boston, and yes, Louisville was actually one of the original charter members. But of those charter teams, only one charter team is still around, and that was the Boston Red Stockings. And that team eventually became, as of now, the Atlanta Braves. Then, in 1896, Bart Johnson was the first president of the American League, which was founded there, and it formed 8 new teams of that. But this included the original Baltimore Orioles. Actually, those Orioles would later on becoming the New York Yankees, baseball's most successful franchise, by a wide margin. The Boston Americans, which becomes the Boston Red Sox later on, and the Detroit Tigers, which are still here to this day, as the Tigers ever since. And in 1903, the two leagues had signed an agreement to allow the champion of the two leagues to play against each other in a series that's called the World Series. And that series was pitted between the Pirates and the Boston Americans, which Boston being the world champions, behind the pitching of none other than the legendary pitcher Cy Young, who has his own award named after him, the Cy Young Award for the best pitcher. However, the major problem with early baseball was the fact that baseball had a bit of a dead ball era. It was dominated by pitching, which you can see on the second graph showed contributions to slugging average, and it's really low, and that's because of the dominance of pitching. Pitching was especially dominant. And low-scoring games. And baseball was that kind of point. However, the reason that this era didn't last very long was because it made different rule changes to make the game more lively. But the big major catalyst for the rise of baseball was this guy to the left. This guy is none other than the Sultan of SWAT, Babe Ruth. This man was to Major League Baseball what Muhammad Ali was to boxing, or was to football what Pele was. He was this larger-than-life figure that really encapsulated the sport. I mean, as much as he has a larger-than-life personality, his dominance in the batter's box is just second to none at the time. And he still has some impressive records that still last to this day. And in his career, he hit over 714 home runs, which is basically the ball hitting out of the outfield. Which, by the way, I mean, only two players have ever surpassed that mark. And those two get their own mentions when I go to their respective teams. But those two are Barry Bonds and Hank Aaron. Then afterwards, in 1947, Jackie Robinson, the guy to my right, broke Major League Baseball's color barrier by being the first black player to join the major leagues. When he played for the Brooklyn Dodgers, which has recently been moved to New York from Brooklyn to LA to become the Los Angeles Dodgers that we know today. Then in the 70s, the players' union becomes more powerful, and the players' salaries increase to the free agency system, which creates opportunities for players to have mobility and such. Oh yeah. Yeah, you do know the Babe Ruth. Yeah, Babe Ruth is the most iconic, one of the greatest players ever, and there was a movie about Jackie Robinson, yes, 42, and I highly recommend it. And one of the major people that have been around Jackie Robinson was a guy named Pee Wee Reese. And basically, Pee Wee Reese does not get the credit he deserves because he is from around Louisville, and he was a huge supporter of Jackie Robinson back in the day. He was one of the few people that stood by him despite the racial insults, which I think speaks louder to Pee Wee Reese's character. I mean, is this wonderful here? Absolutely gorgeous. That went absolutely amazing. What a beautiful day. We're flying. So we're actually not too far from Fort Knox. So Fort Knox was actually built in 1918 itself, and it is adjacent to the U.S. Bullion Depository, which the depository holds around 147 million troy ounces, or 4,580 metric tons of gold bullions, and those bullions are worth 290 billion U.S. dollars, which is a lot. And believe it or not, only three high visitors that have been into the depository outside of the U.S. Treasury, that being President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1943, Mary Brooks in 1974, and Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin in 2017. those are basically the only people that have really been in there. Yep. And in fact, Fort Knox is actually one of our PUIs in the game. And here, oh, whoops, wrong one. See, here's the picture of the bullion depository, and there is FDR. Actually, back in the day, they actually they stored the U.S. Declaration of Independence and Constitution that have been stored here for World War II in case of an invasion. But in addition to all those, they also once stored the Crown of St. Stephen's, which was the Hungarian royal crown. Which is kind of interesting. In addition to this as well, Fort Knox has also been the U.S. Army Armor Center for over 60 years. And there's even a museum dedicated to General George S. Patton, who was America's most well-known tank commander of the Second World War. But we're not going to be landing Godman, we're just going to fly past it. Yeah, but they didn't actually do Goldfinger at Fort Knox. They actually did it in Bowman Field, and that's actually the next landing spot. Yep, George S. Patton, one of the most famous people. Definitely a very famous American general. You can want to see this area as tanker country. Yeah. A lot of tank stuff. Been around here. Oh, there's Seamus. No, this is not actually at 1900s. It's always been 1500 Zillows, Seamus. But it's nice seeing you here. So currently, our nearest airport, if you want to join in, is going to be at Godman Army Airfield, and that is at Kilo Foxtrot Tango Kilo. That would be our nearest destination. What I think, Seamus, is that you confused it with Colonel Fort Extreme. I think that's probably the reason. time past Godman Army Airfield, and we can take a bit of a tour around Fort Knox for a bit. Hello there, Night Gnome. It's good to see you. Splasher, I forgot to talk about, yeah, Bambino was one heck of a pitcher. In fact, that's how Babe Ruth got a start, was not just for his hitting, but also his pitching. Still, the Babe Ruth trade was one of the worst trades in Major League history. Even though you couldn't blame the guy for trading him, it ended up being terrible for the Red Sox, whoever they traded him with. And I'll definitely talk about more when we get to New York and Boston. Do you know about women team in baseball? Saw a movie between this. Yeah, there have been women leagues back in World War II, actually. Because a lot of the baseball players actually went to World War II. There's some very well-known baseball players that did this. One of the most famous was Ted Williams. And he actually volunteered to join the Second World War. Due to all the player shortages, they had to do women's leagues. And those leagues eventually became softball, which is the sister of baseball itself. Oh yeah, a League of Their Own. Their Splasher. Now, I never really watched that one. I think the baseball movies I watched, were the remake of The Angels in the Outfield. I watched Moneyball with Brad Pitt. That one was a really good one. And maybe one day I can see Major League and Bull Durham are ones I want to watch. Alright, then I'll take it on your recommendation there, Splasher. Oh, Robert Redford. I never really went into much of that. Oh yeah, was he part of the movie too? Oh, The Natural. We're not getting too far from Fort Knox. We're not getting far from it. Though I guess if Colonel Fork's not doing Sunday streams for much longer, I think I might want to move it to 1900 Zulu, I believe. But I mean, I'll do what's comfortable for me. basically we're getting there. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the next thing, and that's the city of Louisville, believe it or not. So Louisville was founded in 1795 by a certain George Rogers Clark, which is right here in the center. Now Louisville's known for quite a lot of things. Louisville's very well known for the Kentucky Derby. That is kind of a religion down here. In addition to Kentucky Derby, that's not the only major festival. Thunder over Louisville is also there, and that is the nation's largest fireworks display. And unbelievably, it also has the world's largest Beatles festival, organized by actual family members of the Beatles themselves. Which is pretty crazy. The city has a population of over 766,000 people, and if you want to get a good bite to eat at the city of Louisville, the hot brown and Derby pie are definitely popular favorites of the city. Now, Louisville's known for a lot of famous people, but the most famous person on the right is none other than Muhammad Ali itself, one of the greatest sport icons of the last century. Muhammad Ali was born and raised in Louisville. He was born as Cassius Clay, and with the help of his famous boxer, with his trainer, he helped took the World Heavyweight Championship more than a few times, and it's so much so they even named the airport Louisville International after him. Very, very famous in the city. But compared to many people forget Louisville itself actually has a pretty long history of baseball. After all, Louisville was one of the charter teams of the National League. They were named the Louisville Grays, but they only lasted for 2 years until 1878. Then there was actually a second team, that being the Louisville Clips, and they later became the Louisville Colonels. And even though they're not around here anymore, they still have some iconic players, including Fred Clark, Rube Waddle, and this guy right here, baseball legend Honus Wagner. Now, you may know him for that really expensive baseball card that sells over $3 million. But what people don't know about Honus Wagner is that he's a baseball legend, one of the best in the game. And we'll talk even more about Honus Wagner when I get to Pittsburgh. And once we get there, we'll be talking about Honus Wagner for a good bit. And basically, Louisville, for the most times, was bouncing around different teams, including the minor leagues and the Negro Leagues. Yes, Negro Leagues, as black players weren't really allowed to play in the majors before Jackie Robinson. So they were actually talk about that. And I'll talk more about those leagues, those black leagues, in Kansas City, because that's where the museum for them is held, in KC. But basically, that eventually becomes the Louisville Slugger Field. This is the home of the Louisville Bats. And actually, let me show you this. Louisville Bats represent, boys. The Bats are represented. The Louisville Bats were originally the Louisville Redbirds, and they were quite the popular team in the minor leagues. They used to play at Old Cardinal Stadium, and that was that's right at the Kentucky Fairgrounds area. That's not far from the Muhammad Ali International. Like I said, I'll be giving you a good tour of the city. My local city. Even though I don't live in Louisville, I live somewhere else. That as well. And basically, for those that don't know, Louisville Slugger Field is host to the Bats, the AAA affiliate of the Cincinnati Reds. And they've been there for a very long time. And their mascot is Buddy Bat. And if you're wondering why they're called Louisville Slugger Field, well, you can't talk about Louisville baseball in Louisville without mentioning the Louisville Slugger baseball bat. And according to company legend itself, a certain young Bud Hilrich, he was working in the he created his own bat for Pete Browning, who was a megastar for the Louisville Cardinals. And after he watched the team play, he saw Browning break his bat, and a young Bud Hilrich actually offered Pete Browning a new bat. So, and then one afternoon, he made a new one in the woodworking shop, and he gave it to Pete Browning, and he had 3 hits with the bat Bud made. And so much so, and since Pete Browning was known as the Louisville Slugger, thus a new brand was developed, the Louisville Slugger baseball bat. And right here, if you see right here in the center, to our left, that is Pete Browning himself. He was a very important player for the team back in the old days. In fact, so much so, some people even consider that he should be in the Hall of Fame alongside other legends just because of how influential he is. But that never sat well with his father, because J.F. Hilrich actually wanted to make butter churns. So Bud wanted baseball bats, his father wanted butter churns. Take a guess who actually won out in the end. Yeah, young Bud Hilrich actually won. However, what really took the step lead for the company was its first endorsement. And actually, believe it or not, the player that made the unheard of endorsement of a product was none other than this guy on the right, Honus Wagner. He is the first baseball player to endorse a product, actually of any sport, believe it or not. Now, these days, athletes usually take their endorsements and sponsorships for granted, but not back in 1905. Honus Wagner actually endorsed Louisville Slugger bats, and that was a really big deal for the company. The other thing was getting a guy named Frank Bradsby, who was a successful salesman, and eventually became the company known today as Hilrich and Bradsby. Now, here's an interesting fact about personal stuff. My actual dad works at Hilrich and Bradsby. I'm not kidding. My dad actually works there. And I got one of his baseball bats, so hold it for 1 second. It's right here. Yep, it's a Louisville Slugger baseball bat. It's a souvenir bat. That means you can't take it for the Major League games. But it's a really nice souvenir. Swings quite nicely. I'll put this back. So, basically, there. Now, this one right here in the middle is, wait there. Excuse me 1 second. We're at Fort Knox, guys. So, I'm going to take this off autopilot for a bit. And let's fly around Fort Knox for a little bit. So, This is around the armor training school. This is as well. And I could see on the far right, I found the bullion depository. Right there. That is where all the gold's stolen. But don't even think about taking it. The security is absolutely Loctite. It's nearly Loctite security. That's just how crazy it is here. You don't even want to think about it. Now the thing on the right, the bat on the right, is actually used by Reds and Orioles legend Frank Robinson. And he used this bat during the 60s. So let's see. Turn on autopilot. And then the next thing I gotta talk about is gonna be the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. And believe it or not, visitors could actually enter the factory, believe it or not. In the Louisville Slugger Museum History and Factory, you actually could take a factory tour of the place. And you get to see how bats are made. And basically you can get there, they depart every 10 to 30 minutes, so guests can see how 1.8 million baseball bats a year are made each year. So you can see all the different processes they make the bats, and trust me, they take a lot of work. Now, by today's standards, most of it's made by computers and hand original stuff, but imagine back in the day, they had to make this by hand. They had to have measurements by hand and have references of each of the bat sizes. That takes a lot of work, which is pretty crazy to think about at the time. In addition to this as well, after you complete the factory tour, every guest gets a miniature souvenir bat at the end. And you can even personalize these bats. Those bats. Also, in addition to this, there's also the Slugger Museum, which is in the middle picture right over here. In that middle picture, you can visit the museum, and they contain many unique exhibits, including a signature wall from thousands of signatures of MLB players and legends, from Honus Wagner to Cal Ripken Jr. There's a big glove that is a 17-ton sculpture handcrafted from 400 million-year-old limestone. A bat vault, which I was hoping my dad can actually take me to there because it's got priceless artifacts of baseball bats. And one of the most... And you also got... And those bats include bats from Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hit streak and Babe Ruth's 1927 baseball bat for 21 of his record-setting at the time 60 home runs, which is pretty crazy to think about. And the last thing, the coolest part about the Slugger Museum Factory, even more so than the factory, is that you could actually hold some of these non-replica historical bats used by actual MLB legends. I am not kidding. You can actually do that, and that's actually insanely cool. That means you can hold players of Derek Jeter, Mickey Mantle, and Johnny Bench. All MLB legends. You get to actually hold their bats. Of course, you have to wear a glove to protect the bat in the wood. But I mean, how cool is that? It's very neat. And of course, obviously, you can't forget about the giant baseball bat in the outside. You can't forget about that. This is the largest baseball bat in the world. It is over 120 feet tall, and it weighs over 68,000 pounds, which is about 34 tons. which is absolutely huge. Trust me, you will see even when you get to the sim. It is not a small feat. It is actually really big. Yep, I see you, Kazaki. Splasher6 saying that you really enjoy the information. Yep, I spent a lot of time getting the information. I wanted to make this a very informational stream and a very enjoyable one too. I work very hard to get a lot of the sources and images. Like, trust me, getting trying not to worry about copyright and stuff is very important. Kozaki Fire said you kept the slugger in the truck for years alongside a glove. Of course, I mean that's the classic backyard baseball. That's been a classic for years. So we're going to make a bit of a waypoint. We will actually make a waypoint at Louisville International. We won't be landing there. We'll actually be landing in Bowman Field. But I want to take a bit of a tour flying around for a bit. And I know the city quite well. So now we're flying over a bit. We're not far from the airport. So, Louisville International, Kentucky Sanford. Now, this airport is actually most well known for UPS. United Parcel Services uses this as its world port, which is their most important airport for cargo, and they basically take it from all around the world. Comes to Muhammad Ali International. That means cargo flights all the way from Tokyo, Shanghai, Dubai, and Cologne all fly to Louisville, which is actually insane. And the warport itself is interesting, as it's over 5.2 million square feet in size, and it's capable of handling 115 packages per second, which is around 416,000 per hour, which is insane. I mean, think about how hard it must be for everyone to sort all those packages. That is an absolute pain. So actually, believe it or not, what I got from Muhammad Ali is actually a third-party edition. It is from FS Dream Team. They did a really good job of accurately portraying the airports. In addition to having the UPS world ports, they also contain the Kentucky Air National Guard. And in addition to this as well, they also have the Ford factory that's right next to it, and that's where they make many of the F-150 trucks of the Fords. time for me to turn off my autopilot. Let me just change the camera. I'm just... gonna go down. So there is big old Muhammad Ali International. It's quite a nice size airport. So, according to my nav map, right next to it is actually Kentucky Kingdom, and that's actually an amusement park. And obviously, then beyond that is the Exposition Center. That contains Freedom Hall, the old home of the Louisville Cardinals, and the home of the Kentucky Fairgrounds, which is where the Kentucky State Fair is located. Absolutely crazy how many UPS planes. It's nuts. There is Kentucky Kingdom to my left. That's where all the rides in the water park. There's the Kentucky Exploratory Center. That includes Freedom Hall and the entire convention center. And there is actually Old Cardinal Stadium. That's actually has been torn down since then. But that's where the Louisville Redbirds used to play baseball, and the University of Louisville football played there. Make sure to turn. Okay, turn around. Ahead of us, that is Cardinal Stadium, home of the University of Louisville. It holds 60,000 people. Now, of course, the model has not been correct because they added a recent expansion, which bumped it from 50,000 to 60,000. John M. Patterson State Ballpark, that's home to the University of Louisville baseball. And right in front of us is the reason why Louisville has the nickname Derby City. Yeah, this is Churchill Downs. Very, very famous for horse racing. There has been horse racing ever since 1875 was the first horse race here. Usually it can hold 50,000 spectators, but on Derby Day, expect 3 times that crowd. It's pretty crazy to think about. So I'm going to go fly ahead. Appreciative. So for those that don't know, Wombat49 is a member of the Thunderflies, Two-Tone Murphy's personal flight display team. Probably the first in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And definitely give Two-Tone Murphy a follow. He makes some of the best content in all Twitch for Flight Sim. He's just such a great guy to be around, such a friendly person. And the other shout I want to give is to Allison Johnson. who even made this possible. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't even be streaming this today. So guys, we're flying to downtown Louisville. There's quite unique different places and landmarks that I know very well. We'll be hanging around from the waterfront. From the front, as you can definitely tell. There is the Muhammad Ali Center, that's by the waterfront. And right there, past me, that's Slugger Museum. Let me circle around so I can get back to the Slugger Museum. That may be a hard one to spot. Whoa, that was loud. Yeah, it is not like being... But right there it is, the Louisville Slugger Bats, right in front of us. Don't crash. So below me, that is the KFCM Center, home of University of Louisville basketball. And trust me, basketball is a major deal in the city of Louisville. It's a huge deal in the city. And now, right over here, that's Louisville Slugger Field. Holy moly, Two-Tone Murphy! Thank you so much for the follow, man. You're a freaking legend. I'm not kidding. You're God tier. And then around this area, Bardstown, this is actually around this area. This is where, that's where the City Football Club actually plays. And crap, another follow, Steve Solo K. Now following, thank you so much, man. One of the leaders of the Thunderflies. So guys, we're going to be stopping at our next stop, Bowman Field. This is the iconic airfield that was used very much for World War II. This was built in 1918. Not only is it the state of Kentucky's first airport, but this is actually the oldest continuing operating airport in the entire country. And during the Second World War, Bowman Field was the nation's busiest airport. Apparently, in a 3-month period, over 1,600 recruits were actually underwent basic training. It's also home to the U.S. Army Air Force's School for Flight Surgeons, Medical Technicians, and Flight Nurses. And at one point, Charles Limbaugh actually landed the Spear of St. Louis at Bowman, which is insane to think about. I need to adjust my flaps. No, that's too steep, that's too much. And for the runway, I will be landing in runway 06 will be my runway to land. Hello guys so much. Hello there, Two-Tone Murphy, Allison Johnson. Hello guys so much. And also, and thanks Wombat for saying the great stream. I know I've been really worried for it, and I think the stream went well. I can't wait to get more people on board. But yeah, for you guys that just came in, we just flew over the city of Louisville for a bit. I showed Botip and Kozaki around the city, and I taught them a bit of history about why baseball is so important in the city of Louisville, including its deep history, especially with the Louisville Slugger baseball bats. And if you guys want me to, I could show you the baseball bat again. And let me capture my beautiful face. Steady, easy there. I'll show you guys why I won that landing challenge. Careful. Got it. Hello there, Red Dragon. Samuru. It's fine if you're a little late. It's fine. We just touched down in Kilo Lima Oscar uniform. We just landed there. Oh, sorry to hear that about that, Alison. Oh no. Oh no. Why is Bowman like that? How dare you disrespect a great airfield? I guess we're still waiting for Botip, so let me go ahead and try and track his landing. Yes, Goblin Zeus, the Jabiru is kind of unstable, but I like to pick it because it is one of my favorites, though. It's so rewarding to... I guess if you all want to join, it is on the East USA server, and we gotta pick general aviation. Don't even think about taking an airliner. Please, the last thing I need is a loss of frames just because there's an airliner. I guess if no one else is here, I think we can get started for the next leg of the flight. If you don't mind, Kozaki Flyer. Oh, I'm sorry there, Allison. I've heard you had a really rough week. You know, you need all the rest you can get, especially after that long, quite a bit of a flight yesterday. gonna go ahead and take off. For a bit. Allison Johnson posted my stream. I really appreciate it, Allison. Again, I wouldn't be doing this without you. It's your show. I know it takes a bit of time. Back to the navigation hold. I'm going to turn on altitude hold. I'm going to set this back to 2,000 feet. I'm going to do this first. But then I just reset the altitude. Yeah, I appreciate the ballpark alerts there, Allison. Yeah, they're all for public domain, so I don't have to worry about anything. Yep. Yeah, I wanted to make this a really cool touch. I want to give it my own touch. And yeah, I mean, you can't have ballpark music without the organs. Especially when you get to a lot of the older stadiums itself. So, our second and final stop, we will be landing at Kilo Charlie Victor Golf. That is Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International. And the reason I want to get there is because I got something special for the last leg. And something pretty cool that I think a few of the Thunderflies would really like. Okay, I'll probably tell you what it is. We're gonna be going in ultralight. We're gonna do it coffee house style. Ultralight, baby. Because I don't want to be just the guy who flies over a stadium temporarily. I want to explore the city of Cincinnati for a bit. You know what I'm thinking about doing there, Allison, is I guess next time I'll just stream in 1900 Zulu. Oh, I'm sorry there, Goblin Zeus. I can understand it's not such a, I understand the frame data problem, frame issues. I feel you, so I feel you a lot for that. But hey, watch the stream. I think it'll be well worth it. Allison Johnson, you landed there so many times. Yeah. Basically, this airport is known for FedEx. I believe DHL lands a lot there too. That's why Covington is such a big cargo place. So the question is, I know a lot of you have been asking, what makes ballparks stand out from other stadiums in different sports? Well, one of the things that really stands out about ballparks, and something that I know very well about them, are compared to other sports, the infield is the only part of the stadium to actually have rigid dimensions, whereas in the outfield they actually have varying dimensions. However, the Major League Baseball did pass a rule in 1958 to limit the foul lines to be at a minimum distance of 325 feet to prevent cheap home runs from being hit out of the ballpark. Because a lot of teams want to capture on the success of Yankee Stadium by shortening the fences. Meaning that it was extremely cheap home runs. and if you wonder why older ballparks have varying dimensions, well, a lot of it had to do with the fact that they were built on the property they were built on. Some stadiums, for example, have really deep center fields. Like the Polo Grounds were built in such a way that was well circular, whereas most modern ballparks, they choose to have those dimensions itself. Let me turn down this music for a sec. Where most other ballparks were kind of built back in the day, were crammed into the limited space. That's why you see ballparks with extremely varying dimensions. The two most extreme dimensions, though, the most extreme dimensions is the Polo Grounds. So, left field and right field were 278 feet at left and 258 feet at right field, which is extremely short by modern day standards. That means a traditional fly ball would actually land on the stands. I am not kidding. And here's the most extreme part. The Polo Grounds at the right center and left center field, 440 feet. That means you would have to hit a ball beyond that to hit it out of the ballpark, and that is a home run in nearly every other ballpark. And in the chats, do you want to guess how deep center field was? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. 483 feet. Yes, that's actually true. In most ballparks, that would be out of here trying to hit there. That's why Polo Grounds had so many inside the park home runs. It's crazy. Splasher6 says, have you ever heard of the George Carlin baseball versus football comedy routine? Not really. I've not really heard much about George Carlin, so I don't really know very much about it. Kozaki Flyer, if you have to catch up with me, don't be afraid to use slew. I don't really mind. Alright, I might have to Google it sometimes. Yeah, I might have to do it, Splasher. Definitely a really nice place. Definitely one of the few towns in the river we will go through would be the town of Carrollton. Would be something right next to the Ohio River as well. But the Ohio River is quite the important river for trade. So basically the Ohio River goes through multiple different states. It starts from Illinois and it goes all the way through to Pennsylvania. So it goes through Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. It's fine, Kazaki. I'm glad you're up. You could use slew to catch up if you needed to. Itself. Now, one of the most important parts. His question is, now we get to actually go to the host city, in particular in question, Cincinnati, Ohio. So, Cincinnati is very well known for this. This is the city of Cincinnati. This is what Cincinnati used to look like back in the old day with the old Union Terminal and such. And this is what Cincinnati looks around now. Sorry, let me... So this is what Cincinnati, Ohio used to look like back in the old days. And this is what it looks like now. Cincinnati is really growing a lot as a city. In the 1830s, there was a lot of German immigrants in that town. And so much so, Cincinnati got one of its nicknames, the Port Town. But the real true nickname of Cincinnati is the Queen City. It is actually one of the largest, it's actually one of the largest, it's the third largest city in the state of Ohio, over 303,000, and the metropolitan area around it is actually the largest at over 2 million. But the one thing that really sets Cincinnati apart has been baseball. You see, baseball in Cincinnati has probably got the longer history in Cincinnati than in almost any other city. So, this goes all the way back to 1869. On the left, the Cincinnati Red Stockings, baseball's first ever professional baseball team. Before that, baseball was kind of a bit of an amateur sport. There was not much of a professional team in the area. So they actually have that as well. And there's the front nine. In fact, the Reds were the first valid professional baseball team in history. However, the team didn't last too long as well. And the last year to team was in 1871, but the legacy of the Red Stockings still carries on to this day in Cincinnati, and that's why when Cincinnati got a National League team, they kept it to the Reds. This picture here is from 1888, what the Reds used to look like. And many of the members of the 1869 team here, they formed the Atlanta Braves, which is still around to this day, believe it or not. Now, the modern incarnation of the Reds actually was established as a charter member of the American Association, which was an old baseball league back in 1881, but they recently joined the National League in 1890. So this was actually still during the time of the American Association. However, at the start of the 20th century, the Cincinnati Reds had hidden stars like Sam Crawford and Cy Seymour, who were really solid players, but the team didn't really have much importance of the 1900s, were not really kind to the Reds for much of it. However, in 1912, they opened a brand new steel and concrete ballpark, Redland Field, and that would later become Crosley Field, named after this guy, Powell Crosley, in the middle. Now, Powell Crosley, for those that don't know, actually got his name from the radio business. In fact, Powell Crosley's been nearly everywhere, it turns out. For example, Crosley's been in RCA radios and such. He's been all over radios, television. He did the KWLW, which is the Reds broadcasting radio station. His name is all over that. And he bought the team back in 1933, but I know that's a bit later, but it's still important to keep in mind as well. The Reds have been playing baseball on that same site ever since. They've been playing baseball there for the same site around 28 years previously. But in the late 1910s, the Reds really began hitting their stride, eventually leading to a 1919 World Series championship led by Hall of Famer Ed Ruscha, which is right here. To our left is Ed Ruscha. He's in the Hall of Fame right now, with Ed Ruscha and Heine Groh alongside two pitchers with a solid pitching staff. They won the 1919 World Series against the Chicago White Sox. However, that series is actually infamous for a different reason. And that's because it involved the Chicago White Sox. And when I talk about the history of the White Sox, I will absolutely go over it. And basically, it is baseball's first major gambling scandal. It absolutely tarnished the league's reputation at the time. In fact, it led nearly to the entire team basically getting banned, which is really bad. However, afterwards, though the Reds weren't really much, they still had really good players. but their offense never lived up to the expectations of pitching, and thus, by 1931, the team was actually bankrupt due to the Great Depression, and Redland Field was a despair. So, in fact, that led to this guy in the middle, Powell L. Crosley. He was an electronics magnate. He had RC radios, he had cars, he had everything you could want. And he bought the team, and basically he included... Basically, Powell Crosley produced radios, refrigerators, and other household items. He bought the Reds out of bankruptcy and hired Larry McFall to be the general manager. Crosley started LW Radio, which is the Reds' flagship radio broadcaster, and the Crosley Broadcasting Corporation in Cincinnati as well. 2 years later, the Cincinnati Reds became a first throughout the 30s. The Crosley Field became the host of baseball's very first night game back in 1935 when they played the Brooklyn Dodgers, and that was also the first baseball fireworks night as well. So the tradition of fireworks being played after games at night, that started here in Cincinnati. And also, Johnny Vanderveer became the only pitcher in Major League history to actually throw back-to-back no-hitters, which is insane. And if you want to know how difficult a no-hitter is, basically a no-hitter is you don't give up any hits for 9 innings in a game, and that's not easy considering how difficult it is. In fact, in terms of Major League no-hitters, for Major League Baseball, there's only been 399 no-hitters, which sounds like a lot, but it actually really isn't. Oh, I have the Van Dermeer double no-hitter bobblehead, yeah. But that's still crazy to think about the odds. Now imagine doing it in back-to-back starts. That's actually insane. And they also had in addition, during the late 1930s, they also had another Hall of Famer to aid them out this time. That player was Ernie Lombardi, the catcher. He was named the most valuable player in 38. In 39, they went to the World Series as the National League champs, but they got destroyed by the New York Yankees, which, to be expected, those Yankee teams were insane. Those Yankee teams have like Yogi Berra and all that. However, in 1940, they did win the championship. They won their first championship in 21 years by beating the Tigers, Colonel Fork's team, by the way. However, they weren't so great in the 50s. In the 50s through 60s, they were never the team they once were. They were becoming once were. One famous thing in the 50s was the team name was actually changed from the Reds to Red Legs, and that was due to the communist scare of the 50s. Which is kind of a big deal back in the day. However, the 60s started producing stars for their farm system, which is basically their minor leagues. And those players are going to be pretty major later on. Pete Rose, Tony Perez, Johnny Bench, and Dave Concepcion were all major stars for the team, developed into stars in the 1970s. They became one of the best teams in Major League history. And that's because we'll get to this. Yeah, something all Reds fans want to talk about, the Big Red Machine era. In fact, the stretch between 1970 and 79, among the best teams in Major League history. In 1970, the Reds hired a little-known manager called George Sparky Anderson, and he was hired as the manager. And thanks to him and the stars developed in the farm system, the Reds began a decade of excellence, called the Big Red Machines. In 1970, they ditched their old stadium, Crosley Field, for the big old multi-purpose stadium, Riverfront Stadium, which had artificial turf all over the place. That seated 52,000 people, which is located right here, which is located in one of the later slides. with that team, in 1970 they didn't really win the World Series. Back in 1970, despite the fact they won 70 of their first 100 games that year, which is actually really stupid as well. Allison Johnson said latest Red to throw here was Wade Miley. Yeah, he just threw one this couple weeks ago. However, despite losing the 1970 World Series to the Orioles, the Reds actually had great postseason this season as well, but they never went over the hump. 71, they didn't make it to the playoffs. 1972, they faced the Oakland Athletics in the World Series and they lost in 72. 73, they made it to the NLCS, but they lost to the New York Mets in the NLCS back in 74. Back in 73. 74, after much excitement, including that season where Henry Aaron entered opening day with 713 home runs. And yes, the Reds were the team where Henry Aaron broke Babe Ruth's home run record. However, 75 was their year. They won 108 games that year, absolutely crushed the National League West, swept the crap out of the Pirates in the National League Championship Series, and they faced the Boston Red Sox in that series. Now, that series was well known for Carlton Fisk home run in Game 6. But despite that, the Reds won the game in 7, giving Cincinnati their first championship in 35 years. And then the very next year, they went back to the World Series, played against the Yankees, and absolutely destroyed the Yankees, swiping them in 4 straight games. I mean, it makes sense why they're so good. They have so many Hall of Famers. Tony Perez, Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, Dave Concepcion. Dave Concepcion not a Hall of Famer, but absolutely. And then you also have Pete Rose, who would easily be in the Hall of Fame in nearly every other criteria. Unfortunately, the problem with Rose was his gambling issue. Oh, hello there, Test Pilot 72. Thank you for following. Yeah, we're on our way to Kentucky Covington International. However, after the 70s, though, by 1982, the Reds, though, were not the same team. They had some really rough moments. However, they did have a few really nice pieces back in the later 80s. One of those players, there were quite a few players. They got trade acquisitions of Jose Rijo, who was a big piece of that 90 World Series, and then a little guy and a well-known shortstop by the name of Barry Larkin. In addition to this, they also had another really big star in that as well. They also have Eric Davis, who ended up being a pretty major star for that team. In 1990, led to a really unexpected team, led by manager Lou Piniella. They completely shocked baseball by leading the National League West from wire to wire. After winning their first 9 games, they just started out 33-12 and maintained their lead throughout the year. And that 1990 team was led by Chris Sable, Barry Larkin, Eric Davis, Paul O'Neill, and Billy Hatcher in the field. And the pitching staff was held down by Jose Rijo. After winning that, the Reds beat the Pirates in the championship series, and they went against the heavily favored Oakland Athletics. And at that time, that Oakland Athletics team was stacked. They got Ricky Henderson. They had juiced up Mark McGwire, who can absolutely hit boot shots, and Jose Canseco. Those two could absolutely destroy baseballs, by the way. And they swept them in 4 straight games. And I almost forgot one more thing about the Athletics. I forgot Dennis Eckersley as well. And the Reds still swept them. However, after that, though, it was kind of a fluke, because the Reds were kind of on the downswing afterwards. But in 2003, they finally replaced riverfront with a new ballpark, Great American Ballpark. In addition to this, 2003 was a pretty high expectation year for the Reds. That's because they got local. In addition to having Adam Dunn, they also just acquired Ken Griffey Jr. Now, unfortunately for him, he had a lot of injuries and a lot of issues himself due to injuries. If he didn't have those injuries, Ken Griffey would have been amazing on the Reds. Just telling you that. And they also led by Barry Larkin and Sean Casey. But despite the new ballpark, they continue to still lose. However, that wasn't all bad for the Reds. Yeah, I think the Braves years. Yeah, the Braves of the 90s, man. Kozaki, when I get to Atlanta, the Braves were absolutely dominant. Like, those 90s Braves teams were insane. I mean, Greg Maddux, John Smoltz, Tom Glavine, and then offense you had Chipper Jones on that lineup. God. Those 90 Braves teams were insane. I'm surprised they only won one World Series. But yeah. But despite the Reds, Adam Dunn at one point even became a major power, and at one point, he actually hit a 535-foot home run at Great American Ballpark. Yes, 535. That went completely out of the stadium. It probably even landed in the Ohio River, probably. However, the Reds currently have a major star, though, in 2010. A new first baseman emerged, Joey Votto, the best star in the Reds, by far. And him and with Brandon Phillips, they made it, not only did they win the NL Central, but they made it to the playoffs. However, they got swept by the Phillies, especially with Roy Halladay. It took the Reds 7 more years to finally get back to the postseason, but unfortunately they got beat by the Braves, which is poor Reds fans. And it looks like poor Reds fans. Yep. Alison Johnson said Barry Larkin was amazing. Yeah, Barry Larkin was really good. He was really one of the best as well. Kozaki, yeah, pitching, yeah. Those 90 Braves team, that pitching should be illegal. 3 Hall of Famers on that mound. Yeah, that's almost illegal. And Alison Johnson said you have a Votto original game shirt and signed ball by him. That's cool. Let me go get something back. I'll be back in a second. I'll let you all see it. I'm back. Let me just take a look. It's my own Reds cap. Here it is. This is my Reds cap. Apparently, this looked like one of the older logos. Back in the old days, this was like really old. And apparently, for the Cincinnati Reds, that is from 1890. That was when they first joined the National League. Was that cap? Yeah, it's the very original. Yep, it's the original. Well, I don't think I'm actually that much farther. Yeah, that original cap was 1890s. I wanted to pick a piece of history. However, I'm not that far from landing. I'm actually not that far. Not too far. I'm going to push the gas. Full power. Oh, I see. Let me check who this might be. Also on Spring Train Cap, yeah. And actually, yep, that's right, Kazaki. That's why I want to do this series. Bring people together as a community. But yeah, the Ohio River looks really nice out there, especially when you get across the river. HCBR 1100 is down. Thank you guys so much. Look at that. Metal, baby. So if you wonder what the soundtrack I got from, this is from Soundtrack by Twitch. This is Twitch's own soundtrack thing, and I thought, play some metal. This is as about as metal as the Big Red Machine. And trust me, the Big Red Machine's quite metal. Yeah, this paint. Yeah, this is nice paint. Actually, this is actually the default livery from the Jabber. It's really nice. Oh, and another thing too is I'm planning on flying different planes for nearly every trip, even some without autopilot. we're not actually far from the airport. In fact, we're not far from at all. So the runway I'm going to land, it is going to be 36 right, is where I'm going to be officially making my landing. If I were to guess what I think's behind me, I believe that might be the Thunderflies. Okay, try and listen a little softer. Imagine going from metal to soft. But yes, I'm very lucky to not have any CTDs during the middle of the flight. I'm like very grateful because I know Colonel Forks had this problem, and I really feel for him. I'm hoping that eventually all those problems get fixed with the AMD and such. That's what I'm really hopeful for. So far, so good. The worst thing I had is some stutters, but I mean, I think everything is going so far so good. And speaking of no-hitters, the most recent team to finally get a no-hitter was the Padres, and they just got it back in April 9th. All over a month ago. Which is pretty crazy. Like I said, it's really nice out here today. I set the clouds up to be pretty high up. Let's get a really nice view. Yeah, I do like the paint. And yes, Kozaki baseball does unite people. The only thing that probably could unite people more is probably unite people more is Two-Tone Murphy's Firefly communities. The only thing that probably can unite us more. There's Steve Solo UK and the boys. I believe those are actually the Thunderflies. And what you look at that. Nothing beats the Thunderflies. I bet the only thing that could stop the Thunderflies is Two-Tone Murphy crashing in the neighborhood again. That is the only thing that could stop the Thunderflies. Look at them go. Lower the power. Can you give me the flaps? And here's me for the dramatic effect. So I decided, you know what? Be like Murph. We just gotta keep Murph out of New Zealand. Yeah. I think Murph just had way too much gin Friday. His head's probably killing him right now. Maybe Miss Two-Tone should probably dilute some of that gin. Power back to 0. Here we go for the landing. Let's see if this would be end up being. Oh boy. Textures coming out of the ground. Down. That looked very smooth. Oh my goodness, you guys are actually nuts. And I see up there Kazaki. Let's see if Kazaki can pull off this landing. And don't worry guys, this will be the last time I'll ever use this integrated camera on my laptop. Coming tomorrow, I'm finally gonna get my own webcam. Stick on top of my monitor. And since it might have its own microphone, I don't have to use this. I can use the other stuff. That would be really awesome. that just glitched. You got this, Kazaki. You can do it. Oh my goodness, look at that. That was pretty good there, Kazaki. And look at the Thunderflies. Here they come. Dun dun dun. Charge. Wombat, Masonic Link, Steve Soul-UK, and Test Pilot. They're here with the formation landing. And they... Wait, that's not formation landing. Oh, it's a break. Oh my. That is just wonderful. That's glorious. And here comes the Thunderflies. I believe they're going to be probably ready to land soon. Yeah, they are so good, Allison and Kazaki. And trust me, I've been talking to them nearly every single day. I've seen them practice, probably more than most people have seen them practice. They are unbelievable. So there's a couple of things I do want to talk about while they were about to land. I want to talk about some Cincinnati Reds legends I want to mention. The first one on the left is considered by many to be the greatest Cincinnati Red, Johnny Bench. Now, this beast of a catcher is a hitting monster. But basically... let me get back to this thing. But Johnny Bench, being one of the greatest legends, he actually made the Hall of Fame. He made the All-Star game 14 times. He won 2 World Series with the Big Red Machine and was a 2-time MVP alongside getting 10 Gold Glove awards, meaning that he is one of the best all-around catchers, not just offensively, but defensively. Then we get to Joe Morgan, the second middle. Joe Morgan is a 10-time All-Star with 2 World Series championships and 2 NL MVPs alongside 5 Gold Gloves. The one in the middle is Pete Rose. One of the most... If he... By stats alone, he should be no doubt in Cooperstown, which is where the Hall of Fame's at. He should be a no doubt Hall of Famer. My problem with him is his gambling issue. if he didn't, I mean, his 17-time All-Star appearances, 3 World Series championships, and still has the Major League record in hits, with over 4,256 hits. That's the most of any player in the MLB. In fact, Rose is the only person to be banned by the ineligibles by mutual agreement. He could still make the Hall of Fame, but he still isn't. And the last player we know is Barry Larkin. Larkin's a 12-time All-Star, won the 1990 World Series with the Reds, the last one currently. In the 1995 NL MVP, in addition to his 9 Silver Sluggers and 3 Gold Glove Awards, which basically is the best fielder and hitters in their position. Oh, Allison, did you ever answer the question I told you about the longtime radio broadcaster of the Reds? As a Reds fan, you should probably know who it might be. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay. The answer is Marty Brennaman. He's been broadcasting Reds games since the 70s, and he, alongside Joe Nuxhall, were the main duo. No, not Tom Brennaman. Marty Brennaman. Tom Brennaman's father. Marty was the long time. Now, Tom Brennaman, well, he's really good. He had some pretty controversial stuff last season, and I don't really want to mention it on stream. Not a good idea. And I believe that might be our Thunderflies here for the landing. And finally, the last thing about Cincinnati I want to talk about before we get to the stadiums. We get to the Red Star, Joey Votto, 2010 MLB MVP, been for many years been probably the best first baseman in the major leagues, among the top. Who doesn't like Joey Votto? And finally, ballpark food, everyone's favorite. But Cincinnati's got 2 unique specialties. One is Cincinnati chili, which isn't really chili, it's actually pasta sauce. And you can actually serve it 5 different ways. The most popular is the 3-way, which is meat, cheese, and I don't remember the last one. And hold on for a second. I think the Thunderflies are going to do formation landing. Do not screw this up. I would tell Murph to actually give him a pay cut if they screw this up. Which they don't. They're the Thunderflies. They do not screw up. Best way is a 4-way with meat, cheese, onion, and pasta. And spaghetti. Look at that. Absolutely amazing. Meat, cheese, onion, hot sauce. And then the other one's Goetta. So if you wonder why I picked that, Goetta was actually made by German immigrants back in the 1830s. And that's consisted of pork, beef, and sawmill oats. And you could serve it like a normal sausage. But you can also steam press it in the skillet, and you can put it into sandwiches and stuff. It's a classic of the German heritage in Cincinnati. It's pretty amazing to think about. Give it up for the Thunderflies. They're absolutely incredible. Wonderful job, guys. Well, actually, I'm going to go to be intermission. I got to change my aircraft for the last leg of the flight, if you don't mind. So, Goethe Fest, yeah, that's a big deal in the more German-speaking areas of Cincinnati. That's kind of a big deal, especially. In addition, Cincinnati's got a lot of German foods from their ballpark food. That includes bratwurst and other stuff. In fact, if you want to learn more about the ballpark food, you can go to the Great American Ballpark website for ballpark food. Some of their food options, according to their Major League Ballpark, include some of their more unique options for this year. They got the Smokehouse Parfait with barbecue pulled pork, mac and cheese, and coleslaw in a bread cone. And their crispy fries with marshmallows, chocolate syrup. Their s'mores fry box. So basically, there's that. Ah, yep. About to load in. So originally I put the schedules wrong. It should be Friday and Sunday at 1500, but it depends on if Colonel Fork stops doing Sunday streams. I might want to take that spot on 1900 for Sundays and still keep the 1500 for Friday. Or I could just make it an all Sunday stream. But like I said, I probably want to see who else has schedules. So I do have a question. How do I raid? I'm not. See if there's anyone around for me to raid. Let's see who's around on Twitch after I get done. Okay. I'm back. Guys, you probably know what this is. Yes, that's right. This is the Aerolite. For those that don't know, Coffee House Air Rays, and give him a shout out. He did an entire trip from the East Coast to the West Coast, all in an Aerolite. Like, that is not an easy thing to do. And that's why I give him a lot of respect for that. So we'll be flying through the final destination in the Aerolite. Right here. And we're gonna take off full power. Now I know some of you will be asking, Viper, why are you taking the Aerolite and not taking just flying through the city? Well, this will take it. The reason is I was inspired by some of the other Thunderflies, like Steve Solo, and he really likes using the Aerolite to go through certain cities and locations, and I thought this would be perfect, because this would be the perfect series to actually do this in. since we're going through specific neighborhoods and stuff, and this would be a new way to explore the cities that we know and love, but a new perspective. I appreciate the kind words, Goblin Zeus. Thank you for being there for the whole stream. I mean, that's really huge for me. And I graciously replace it. So we're gonna fly through much of the Ohio River for a bit. I mean, look at the view. It's absolutely incredible flying over the Ohio River. Though the only issue about the Ohio River is it is very polluted. The pollution in the Ohio River is not a good thing. If any of you Thunderflies want to try out the air lights, you can do that. But I wouldn't mind. You guys do what you guys want to do. But over here to our left, according to my nav map, and yes, I like doing it, this is the Marathon Petroleum Corporation. Let me pull that up. As you can see there is the corporation down over here. And basically, the reason I was thinking about using the ultralight, there are some areas where I definitely would absolutely use the ultralight. For example, on some of the city, for example, the Spring Train site in Phoenix is all located in Phoenix. When we want to do the Arizona episode, I'm going to have to take the Aerolite and stuff across the city of Phoenix. Which isn't going to take very long, but I thought that would be something worth trying. And the other thing too is this thing's incredibly stable. So our first stop here is going to be Crossley Field. Now, Crossley Field was Redland Field. This was originally built in 1912. And historically, this has been one of the smaller stadiums in the major leagues over time. It was actually one of the many classic steel and concrete ballparks, and they were built by of the era. And that also include Wrigley Field and Fenway Park were also built during this era, and those stadiums are still in use today. Throughout its history, it was one of the smallest ballparks in the entire Major League. It was really small. And let me show you a picture. Yeah, that's Crossley Field. That is a very, very small stadium. It's really small. Only 30,000 spectators, making it one of the smallest in the league. Making it one of the smallest in the league. And even during its peak, it barely even exceeded 30,000 seats, including temporary seating. And those were created for opening day and World Series games. Contributing to this was the fact there was no bleachers in left and center field, which is, even though it wasn't really shown in the pictures, Crossley Field didn't have anything. It was just a giant wall up there. Of course, they also when Crossley bought the Reds, he actually built light towers and thought of many ways to save the franchise, and one of those was building those light towers, which we know completely changed the game of baseball, being the first nighttime stadium in the league's first night game. Such. In addition to this as well, next is the dimensions, obviously. However, right field was actually really deep, though. Right field actually was 366 feet, which is pretty deep by modern-day standards. But center field was really short. It was only 380 at center field, which is one of the smallest in the league, which was really small. It was really short. And left field was only around 328 feet, which isn't that big. However, left field was notorious. It had a really steep terrace. Now, terraces weren't new, but terraces, there wasn't really much of a warning track in those fields, so they had to have a left field terrace, and it was quite steep. Meaning outfielders would just have a really hard time tracking the ball. As well. This makes it a really interesting ballpark to play. In addition, they also in left field was a giant scoreboard. It was a really old-fashioned scoreboard with a long times clock. Basically, what long times were is they were once a very wealthy company, and they made a lot of shoes and stuff, like rich jewelry and such. Oh, before I do that, there's a really unique Cincinnati landmark I want you all to see. So this is Cincinnati Metro Union Terminal. It's actually a museum now, but this was actually a very iconic terminal back in the day. This is where they used to hold all the Cincinnati Railroad and stuff. It flowed all through there. As well. And it looks like I'm not far from the site, actually. So, Crosley Field site, Crosley Field was among the smallest ballparks. The terrace was actually quite steep. Now, terraces were not unusual in older ballparks, but this one was especially infamous. But of course, it was torn down in 1970, being replaced by Riverfront. And right around here, this is where the old site used to be at Crosley Field. It's around this area. It was around this area. This used to be Crosley. Next up, we go to Riverfront Stadium. So the next part of the slide is Riverfront. Now, Riverfront was built in 1970, and it was not just home to the Reds. That stadium was also home to the Cincinnati Bengals football team. They wanted to build a stadium that housed both of those teams, but the major issue was the stadium wasn't really suited for baseball. It had really big foul lines, and obviously the upper decks, they were kind of far away. Not what you wanted in a baseball stadium. Also, the turf, it wasn't grass, it was artificial turf, which actually really suited the Reds hitters back in the day. And also, the dimensions were cookie cutter. They were identical dimensions. And I mean, it couldn't be farther from the truth from Crosley. Whereas Crosley had character, Riverfront Stadium does not have character. It just doesn't. That ballpark is empty. However, when they were trying to build when they tried to build Great America, they actually had to cut off a large chunk of the stands so they could build Great America Ballpark from it, and it gave it quite a unique look for the 2001 and 2002 seasons. And then finally, so we actually going to take a tour to our right. That is Paul Brown Stadium, home of the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals have been playing here since 2001. It's a really nice football stadium. I think it's quite a nice one. It's quite a nice stadium. I think it's really nice. You get a nice view of downtown Cincinnati. Now, before we get to Great American, we got to talk about the bridge. So the bridge built there at the time was the world's longest. This was the Roning Bridge. And basically, the guy who built this bridge also designed, he designed the Brooklyn Bridge, believe it or not. Now, to our left, this is Great American Ballpark. Great American, this has been the home of the Reds since 2003. And This is a really nice ballpark. You got great views of the Ohio River and overviewing all this area and such. It's a really nice place to play baseball. And I've been to the stadium twice actually. It's a really nice ballpark. Look at that. It's named after Great America Insurance Company. That's what it's named after. Flying around downtown Cincinnati for a bit. Get a nice overview of the city. I mean, just imagine this in VR. It's absolutely crazy in VR. It would be I would absolutely have vertigo in VR. So, now we get to the slideshow for Great American. So this park was built in 2003. So there's some kind of unique features to it. For one, there is a 35-foot wide brick in the concourse. That is nicknamed the Gap, which is based on the concourse. There's also a if you see in the right field porch, I'm gonna try and go down so you can see great detail. Is a bunch of steam stacks, and basically those actually shoot fireworks when a Reds player hits a home run. Right there, you see the smokestacks? When a Reds player hits a home run, that things go off. There's also a steamboat deck. Fans can sit on top of that as well. Look at that, I'm just flying over the ballpark. Absolutely insane. This here is like the fans area. Apparently there might have been rumors that there was one time a ball did hit in the Ohio River. Adam Dunn must have hit it there. There's also a Terrence, a Hall of Fame museum located in the ballpark. And they got tributes to all sorts of Reds legends and icons. From Joe Nuxhall to Johnny Bench. Quite the iconic set of players. Hey. Oh, and I forgot, the Reds were originally facing relocation in the 60s, so the Rosie Reds were a fan group that actually kept the team in Cincinnati. That's an interesting fact. Now, further up the hills, behind me is University of Cincinnati. We're actually going to go head to the final stop. Okay, so now I'm going to be flying over Newport. Home to the Newport Aquarium. That's where they got, like, rays and stuff. Sea life. Look at that. The Thunderflies are amazing. Maybe this should be Thunder over Cincinnati. Also, in addition, something else that they didn't include in the sim is the new stadium for Football Club Cincinnati, which is a recent team. Absolutely crazy sort of stuff. Clear to runway 3R. So I need to land at runway 3R. So I really appreciate. I mean, I was not expecting all of the support. So I thought, to be honest, I thought I would not get as many viewers as I did. But I wanted to thank everyone for being here. It really does mean a lot for me, especially as someone who just had their first stream. I almost messed up not having a stream today just because of some technical issues. There's Cincinnati Municipal, right down there. Alright, time to capture me. This is for the final landing on the stream of my very first ever stream. Man, now this is going to be a moment I will be cherishing for a long time. Come on, Viper. I really like the location. It's right next to the river. Very scenic. Yeah, the Airlight's definitely one of the best add-ons I gotten. It just fights so nice. It's stable, it's smooth. It's everything I could want in a really nice. It's just relaxing to fly over the city. So guys, I do have a question for you, if you don't mind. Maybe, if you guys want an idea, just let me know. Maybe have some random pick shuffler, and you'll be randomly assigned a team. Would that be an interesting idea? Maybe you should have it one of the commands. What would you all think of that? Oh my goodness, that's kind of dangerous though, because that area, part of Cincinnati is quite hilly. Okay, I'm gonna get the smooth landing. Look at that. That was smooth. Smooth like silk. You wonder why I won that landing challenge? It's probably why I'm pretty smooth at landing. I see you out there, Kozaki, and there goes the thunder flies like crazy. man, this has been, what a journey this has been. I used to remember back when I first started streaming, I thought, who would have expected that me of all people would start streaming? But here I am today. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here. For everyone that came here, I really appreciate it. Like, it means a lot, especially the Thunderflies. I kind of wasn't expecting them to show up, but here they are. And there's Kozaki flying the aerolites. Okay. It started there. Oh my, you guys did another break. Break. There's Kozaki Flyer. He's gonna make the landing. Let's see if he nails it. And he's got it. Kozaki Flyer is gonna get it. He got it. They're perfect. Great landing there, Kozaki. Yes, you do sound like a lawnmower. I mean, this thing's probably powered by a lawnmower engine anyway. Probably powered. Probably. Here come the Thunderflies. I think they're gonna attempt. They're gonna attempt the group landing. There's Acorn 39. And here you all come, the group landing. Awesome work as always, guys. You guys are nailing everything. And here they are, the mighty Thunderflies. But I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. Especially when you get the look at that, the view of Cincinnati from all the way up here. I mean, what a view. Alright. There they are, the Thunderflies. So I wanted to hear the Thunderflies test pilot T70 test pilot 72 HCBR 1100 Masonic Lake Wombat 49 Steve Solo UA and 8 Core 39. Thank you so much, Thunderflies, for showing up. And guys, actually, I think we reached the end of our. And I also want to thank Kozaki Flyer for flying through the whole trip with me. Thank you so much for doing it. It's been a pleasure for you to fly with me. I mean, it means a lot. Well, guys, this might be the end of the stream. Catch me this next upcoming Friday at 1500 Zulu, and we'll be checking a trip. We take off from here, and we'll be on our next way to Cleveland, Ohio, to catch the tribe. Thank you all so much for showing up on my first stream, and I know this may not seem like much, but it really does mean a lot for me. I know being the first major stream is always the most difficult one, but I feel like I had a lot of fun, and I'm also grateful to avoid any of the CTD problems. It's like some others. Question is, guys, do we have any channels that we might want to raid? I guess we don't really have very many other people to raid. Let me look at Twitch, see who we might want to raid. I guess there really isn't very much to raid. CL's stream doesn't start till 3, so I guess we'll end the stream right here. Everyone, thank you all for showing up, and have a good time for the rest of the weekend. Fiber Strike out.